This is Transqat, a safe space to stand. Transgender issues, queer people, respectful conversations. I'm host Clare McCarthy. Welcome to Transqat. Welcome to the penultimate episode in a series of 5 shows celebrating Middletown Pride. My name's Clare McCarthy. I'm the producer and host of Transqat the podcast. You can learn more about me and the show at transqat.com. That's TRANSQAT.com. These 5 programs are a collaborative effort among Transqat, WESU, and Middletown Pride. In addition to this on-air broadcast, you can also find them at the Middletown Pride website, middletownpride.org. Finally, you can access a fuller version of the conversation at the Transqat website, at our YouTube channel, and everywhere podcasts are available. Today's guests are Laura Boccadoro from the New Haven Pride Center and Amanda Redfern from Triangle Community Center in Norwalk. You are listening to WESU Middletown 88.1 FM.
WESU relies on over 100 dedicated student and community volunteers to broadcast 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. With such a diverse group of volunteer broadcasters, WESU is able to provide airtime to many communities that are least represented on the radio dial in Connecticut. Please make a donation to support WESU online at wesufm.org. Big or small, every donation counts, so please make yours today. Thank you.
Jill, why don't you tell the class what you did this weekend?
Well, my dad and I went in search of some magical minnows and found a zillion of them in the stream from our lookout rock. Then my sister and I escaped from an evil slug king and went back to my super twig fort for safety. Then we told stories till it got dark, and the Big Dipper led us all the way home.
Wow. Where were you, Jill?
We went to the forest. It's not that far away.
Ask your parents to take you and your friends to the forest this week. It's closer than you think. Check out discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Yeah, I'm Amanda Redfern. I am the I use she and they pronouns. I am the director of programs at Triangle Community Center in Norwalk.
Hi, y'all. I'm Laura. I use she, they pronouns, and I am the communications director at New Haven Pride Center and the producer of New Haven Pride.
So, Norwalk and New Haven, what's going on? What's the situation on the ground?
So every day, especially New Haven, is busy. I mean, I was saying earlier, we are open 4 days a week for drop-in hours. And even today, we were only open for 2 hours, and we saw 13 people come in to access the food pantry, the clothing closet, our hygiene wall, support services. You know, every day we have at least 5 people that were open for our drop-in hours come in at minimum to utilize those services. Today we have a volunteer group actually meeting to talk about in the community how we can all support one another, a bunch of different organizations that we all do some type of social work and whatnot. In New Haven specifically, we've gotten a lot of calls about people wanting to leave the states that they're currently in and coming to New Haven. You know, New Haven, thankfully, is a really well-known, safe sanctuary city in Connecticut. I mean, we scored a 100 on the HRC municipality score.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I mean, that's not just us. It's also the city of New Haven.
That calls for cake. But then, you know, most things in my life call for cake.
But yeah, I mean, it's been insane since the Trump administration has been in office, how many people we get calls from in unsafe states asking about how can I find housing? How can I get a roommate? You know, how can I find a job? We're working really closely with the American Job Center as well right now to get LGBTQ people in safe job environments. And we're doing a lot of those folks coming here, doing initial work so they get experience working within an organization or anything like that. You know, I just had a new person today from the American Job Center start. You know, they are a houseless 21-year-old trans man who's in a shelter right now. And so he's coming in every day for 7 hours, just like all of us, to learn some new skills and get some experience to put on his resume and get out there and get some better tools to go find these jobs to then have, you know, a more sustaining, thriving life. And we're really lucky to be able to partner with so many incredible organizations as well.
I want to go back to those specific services and just make sure people know what they are. But you raised an issue that I I want to put it respectfully. I know that New Haven, yeah, is a leader in terms of being a welcoming community. It does not leap to mind when I think of affordable places to live, though.
Absolutely. I mean, the gentrification in New Haven, I've lived here since 2019. Well, I've lived in this area since 2015, but I've specifically lived in New Haven since 2019. And just in those few years, I have seen rent. I mean, I was renting a 3-bedroom apartment for $1,200. Now I have a 2-bedroom apartment for 17, just within a handful of years. And a piece of it is Yale also buying up a bunch of the property and tearing it down and building dorms. And in New Haven, Yale's not taxed, so they're also not contributing to the city in general. You have big corporations buying buildings and tearing them down and building brand new apartments that start at $2,000 that don't take Section 8. And even if they do take Section 8, it's still like $1,500 for a studio apartment. And it's absolutely ridiculous. It's,
Well, 17 is what I'm paying in my mortgage. Why should you be paying the same amount in rent that I'm putting towards equity in a more, granted, I live in East Haddam, so, it doesn't have the appeal of New Haven.
I mean, personally, I've been an unhoused person in my life, and just having consistent housing has been, really great for me as an individual, but it's hard. It's so hard to just be able to live, New Haven used to be such a city for people to start in, right? And now, unless you are working in corporate America or you are a multimillionaire or make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, you're out of luck. And that's one thing that specifically we have been working with. One, local shelters, some local groups that do workers' rights, like New Haven Rising and stuff like that. They work with direct workers, getting rights for unions, things like that, doing community education nights as well around that, workers' rights, tenant rights, all that kind of stuff. So folks do know they're trying to jack my rent 200 and X amount of dollars. This is what I can do to potentially not make that happen. So we're lucky to have those folks in the center, legal assistance. I know Triangle also has the legal assistance, which is so vital right now for our community. The amount of calls I get on a daily basis asking for legal support. And Amanda, you probably see that a bunch as well.
Yeah. And all the work that y'all are doing up in New Haven is incredible. And previous to working in programs, I worked in housing at Triangle. Yeah, the housing systems it's hard to even say that they're broken, from having been in them and being the kind of person who had to say no to so many people that I didn't think when I took the job, my job would be saying no to so many people. And it's not for lack of trying. It's like simply because there's no funding in them. And when there is funding, it goes like that. And you make such great points, like the income inequality, the housing markets, just the barriers that people have to face to get to that place where they can even just get an application for a rental unit like even looked at, whether it's being queer, whether it's a criminal record, whether it's an eviction, even if they didn't know that they had an eviction. I worked with young adults, 18 and 24, and often their minor children. And it was rough. It was really, really rough. And single parents have it worse. Folks without transportation, even in urban areas, have it worse. So yes, it's such a thing. And I can definitely mirror what you're saying. And we've been getting folks, honestly, for the past 2 years, even previous to the second Trump administration starting, we were, even with just the widespread anti-trans legislation going on throughout the country, we've had folks from Texas, from Florida, all over the place coming here. And we face that same thing. And Claire, to your point, when folks are coming here and we're fleeing because we have a trans kid or because I'm trans or I'm non-binary. And first thing is going well, how are we going to get them to be able to live in one of the most expensive areas of the country? Norwalk, even more so than New Haven. It's so tough. And so again, I think a lot of the work we've been trying to do is that well-rounded ability to how do we support you to be able to build a life here? And it's something that I think I've been trying to talk a lot with Connecticut legislators about, and being hey, we're a safe state. How are we going to get the funding to be able to make sure that folks can thrive here, who are going to flee here? and not to mention the folks that are already here that are already struggling and that are on shelter wait lists or that are on Section 8 wait lists or who have been unemployed regardless of trying. But yeah, the legal stuff is a big one. And honestly, it's just a drop in the bucket. And yeah, we've been hosting legal clinics monthly since January. And I'm one of the facilitators on our weekly advocacy and activism group that we do, which does a little bit of that community education kind of piece that like they're doing up in New Haven, where we're talking about, knowing your rights if you're going to advocate for something, like, knowing how to keep yourself safe at a protest, if that's what you're going to do, knowing how to contact your legislators, like how do you find out who your House rep is in Connecticut? How do you contact them? How do you learn about a bill that's going to impact you? How do you testify? How do you read through this dense stuff? How do you support people if you're not in that community? Like we're trying our best to support the immigrant community right now, right? Yeah. So how do you support the immigrant community if you're, you don't speak a language other than English, or if you're disabled, or you are somebody who's in a tenuous legal situation yourself? Like, how do you do those things? And so it's a lot about that kind of fostering that community involvement and growth and opportunity kind of within all of ourselves, because we really just have each other's backs, right? Like that's as we learn, like so often those systems aren't gonna support us. So I think I like to think is what a lot of the Pride centers in Connecticut right now are doing, is trying to like fill in those gaps that our own cities and state, and especially federally, they're not supporting our folks.
Do you have folks on staff who can help bridge that language barrier?
Speaking for us, we have 2 staff members who can do like conversational Spanish. We have a volunteer who's fluent in Spanish, so that's really helpful. We lean a lot on Google Translate and like language line and things like that, but it's always a huge plus when we can get folks that speak something other than English, whether it's French or Spanish or Portuguese. But of course, those people are exhausted and they're also overworked, and oftentimes they're impacted directly. And so it's always hard to kind of like strike that balance and trying to get that support from folks so that we can help support other people. But like Laura mentioned, I think we try to work a lot with the organizations that are already doing that work and have the infrastructure to do that work. And we're not trying to do it all as much as it feels like that's what you want to do. So we lean into Siri, that's out of Bridgeport and Norwalk. I know Iris is in New Haven, Building One Community in Stamford. It does a lot of great stuff for immigrants. So we've been trying to kind of work to make sure that our referral sources are broad and help encompass that stuff where we can't.
Let's the 3 of us just solve this problem right now. So Connecticut wants to be a sanctuary state. We've declared ourselves such, but we really don't have the infrastructure in place to support these people. What do we need to build, and how do we do that?
We need LGBTQ plus specific shelters. That's something that we need. We need to have places that LGBTQ people can go directly when they're in crisis and feel safe, because I can't even explain to you the amount of specifically trans women that come into the Pride Center to tell me these horror stories that they experience at local shelters, or if they're sleeping out on the street, also the horror stories that I hear. I mean, one woman, I'm not going to go into detail about it, but long story short, was aggressively harassed by the police while they were at the train station trying to sleep, and specifically slurs were used throughout it. They went to a shelter later. They were not allowed to use the shower in the women's bathroom because they were trans. And people were making comments, and other folks at the shelter were saying things. And when they tried to approach a staff about it, the staff had no training as to how to handle that situation. So it was pretty much brushed under the rug. And when that individual came to the Pride Center, they were in complete crisis mode because they felt so unsafe. They felt they had nowhere to go. And, we don't have the funds to be able to house people as much as I wish we did. We have literally apartments above us. I have this dream of one year, buying a bunch of the apartments or renting them above us and them becoming housing, whether it be temporary or permanent housing, but we don't have any besides legal services here and there. And there is nothing specifically just for LGBTQ people when it comes to housing. In Greater New Haven, at least, There's nothing. We can send them to, places that say they're affirming, but how do we know that for a fact, right? When I have people coming to me telling me these incredibly horrific stories, and not stories, experiences they're having, and we try our best to go to these places and offer trainings, even at low cost or for free, just so that they have the capability of handling these situations and not re-traumatizing people.
You are listening to WESU Middletown 88.1 FM.
And I mean that's it's a big goal. There's not a lot of there's no easy way to get to this goal, but at the end of the day, it is so simple. And I don't know how we don't have that in Connecticut right now.
Yeah. So, I mean, even just to start off with, like, Connecticut in itself is not a right to shelter state. We do not have it built into our constitution that people have a right to be sheltered in the state. What that means is within the shelter system that we have, like, those shelters, they fill up and they have what we call wait lists. There are wait lists. In fact, New Haven County's got a longer wait list than Fairfield County, and I know Fairfield County is long. Again, it's not for lack of trying. It simply comes back to the fact that, like, when, those shelters, emergency shelters, were meant to be there. You were there for days. You were there for a week. You were there 30 days tops. Like, those are emergency shelters, right? And so, unfortunately, we've seen people have been in those shelters for like 9 months, sometimes even a year. There's no way for them to get housing independently, and there's not enough housing. Like, there's not enough money in housing programs to have subsidized housing or even transitional housing or housing that is a bridge to being independent later on. And so it gets back down to, like, that housing crisis thing. And so that is a big issue in it. And then it comes back to that the gendering of shelter spaces in Connecticut breaks down to 3 different ones, right? You have men's, you have women's, and you have family. There's criteria that gets you into each one. And if you are trans, now, according to Connecticut's laws, like, if you're trans, you're able to be placed in the shelter that that reflects your gender identity, like your affirmed gender identity. If you're a trans woman, you get to go into a women's shelter, like, no questions asked. If there's a bed, that's your bed. They're not supposed to be able to make you shower separately or make you not be able to use certain bathrooms. Does that happen? Yeah, all the time, because people don't understand. Like, people don't get it, and it is a big thing and something that I've seen. But even for non-binary folks, right? Or if you're trans and you don't think you can pass, or you are struggling with a bunch of stuff like that, you have to choose which one you want to go into. And so you're either leaning yourself into one way to be discriminated against, or you're going to a place where you're opening yourself up to violence, whether that's physical violence, sexual violence, things like that. And, and again, I've known trans clients that way, again, when I worked in housing, who had experienced sexual assaults, who had experienced discrimination, who, were not allowed to use a bathroom and need to soil themselves, like, because they were waiting so long. Like, I've dealt with this stuff. And again, these are points that I brought up to Chris Murphy's office. I've brought this up to my rep in Bridgeport, my state house rep in Bridgeport. Like, these are big things. And there is talk, I think, not necessarily from a queer perspective, but there is talk about looking critically about the gendering of the emergency shelters in the state. And that's for a bunch of different reasons. Like, it was always heartbreaking to have clients, if they were couples or if they were siblings, or any other kind of family unit that was not like a, 2 adults with a child, with like a biological child, or were expecting a child within 3 months. Like, they don't qualify for families. So the amount of people who married people, like married couples, would not go into shelter because it meant that one of them would be left out. Adult siblings, like parents with adult children. If you're 18 and your parents are older and you're evicted from your home together, like, you don't get to stay together. You don't get to pursue a housing plan together. Even just a path to be able to sustain oneself, that's got to be, I think, the first thing. Because what's the use of having a queer friendly shelters if you're going to be in there for a year, 2 years, and you're still not going to get anywhere, and there's still the chances of dealing with violence, and it's such a bigger issue. And I think I know that Rachel, our executive director, has expressed something similar to Laura's thought of like, we would love people to have subsidized housing for queer folks. We'd love to have transitional housing, like something that gets you there for 3 months, 6 months, whatever it takes to become of age or get your documents in order or handle your mental health or get some solid recovery time in you before you go out on your own. Like, I think that's the hope, but it costs so much money and there's so much overhead, and then you're dealing with staffing and property and all of those things.
With the sort of temporary things, Laura, that you were listing off, like a food pantry and a clothing closet, how many people per month can that sustain given your current funding levels?
For full meals, about 150 people a month we can serve, but we do serve over 200. And we're lucky to be part of the Connecticut Food Share. So we do get food at low cost. But with the food share losing federal funding, the food has gotten more expensive. So we have not been able, we used to be able to order like 300 pounds of food. Now we can order about 80 with our budget. We have a lot of clients that are coming in now, like, you guys don't have what you used to have. We can't afford it. We can't afford it. Our clothing closet, it is primarily for unhoused folks and youth now. We do let anybody who comes in that asks to use it. And we used to let folks pretty much grab as much as they wanted. But there was a moment folks were walking out with like 3 bags worth of clothes and whatnot. And, as much as it's all donation based, a lot of the essentials like bras, shoes, dress clothes were going really quickly. It's so important because we call it our gender affirming clothing closet. A lot of 90% of the folks that utilize it are youth. And I mean, every day. And same thing with what Amanda said, we consider youth like up to 25 years old. Every day, literally just yesterday, I had 2 high schoolers in here for 3 hours going through the clothes. Both of them are trans women, and one of them's been coming for years. So I've been able to kind of watch her transition these last few years, and so much of her clothing is from our community closet, our gender affirming closet. And I love whenever she comes in, she's like, I'm here to go shopping. And that's what we want the experience to be. We want people to feel like they're shopping and whatnot. But then also with our hygiene wall, we used to be able to give out full bags of just toothbrushes, toothpaste, shampoo, conditioner, soap. We used to have the laundry detergent little guys that you put in there, combs, body wipes, and things like that for folks who couldn't
Tampons, I'm assuming.
Yes, all kinds of menstrual products, even like the Diva cups. We have emergency contraceptive, but that has gone down a lot. And some of the folks that we were relying on for funding are no longer funding initiatives like that because they have limited funding now, and they have to fund these other initiatives that they have already ongoing or that are a little more of their priority right now, which is all understandable because we're all kind of fighting for the same funding too. That's one thing a lot of people don't talk about when it comes, there's so many LGBTQ orgs in Connecticut, which is incredible, but we're all fighting for the same funding.
That's a pool that's shrinking.
Precisely. It is a pool that is shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. The big question is, how do we keep these essential services sustainable every day? And when I say every day, we have people accessing these services, whether it's one, whether it's two, or all three of them. They're direct services that impact people. And about 80% of the clients that utilize our hygiene wall and food pantry are houseless individuals, houseless queer folks. And I mean, again, we fall back into the whole housing. But yeah, over 200 people a month.
We can have pretty brutal winters here in the Northeast. Yes. So there's the need to provide seasonal clothing for that. Absolutely. But there's also, it seems less important, but if I'm going to go out and try to get a job, I need to have appropriate clothing. And so there are these different layers of purpose to a closet like that.
Absolutely. I mean, we have full suits and ties and dresses and skirts and blouses and button-ups. And we had a young student, actually 16 years old, come in, and our old executive director, Juan Carlos Soto, actually helped them pick out an entire outfit for an internship that they were interviewing for. And it was just, we took the full-length mirror out. We had, they were strutting down. We have a ramp that we call our runway, strutting down the runway and everything. And it really is, it's so special to see those moments, but it also makes you realize like how much support our community needs, especially right now.
Yeah, definitely. We have a bunch of stuff for people for interviewing things and outfits and stuff. And I think similar, we see, I think less specifically youth, but a lot of young folks and newly out trans people, or even just kind of baby stepping trans folks who are out there trying on their first thing. And I think one of the great things we've been able to do is we had a donated sewing machine. So we have a sewing machine there. And so people can literally tailor stuff to fit them right then and there. Because sometimes that's so hard, especially if you're on HRT and your body is changing a lot, or you're, in between weights and things like that. Like it's such a nice thing. And so, and when we've hosted little events, I think we've tried to get folks from, like youth serving orgs to come and bring their kids there and having them go shopping and stuff like that, and hearing the snark about this and that. It's a great thing to see. Yeah, I can just mimic a lot of what Laura's saying, or mirror a lot of what they're saying, because we've similarly have seen such an increase in a use of our food pantry and the hygiene stuff. You could have been saying those words out of my mouth, how much we've gone from having an entire wire rack full of everything from shaving cream, razors, menstruation products, sunscreen, all different types of stuff. Like now it's just like, well, do you have this? Do you have that? And it's like, not today. And with those bigger demands from other places, because if we're struggling, other orgs are struggling too. And again, I think our big thing has been like, not just how do we keep it sustainable, but how do we keep us as a team sustainable? Like, how do we keep the work that we're doing sustainable? Because you just keep seeing more and more gaps emerging, and it's such a internal pressure, I think, to try and fill all of them and do all those things, because it's just devastating when you have to say no to somebody about something that that you used to have or that they need. But I think to me that the biggest point was when we have a lead volunteer who manages a lot of the food pantry stuff, and who was like, oh, we were supposed to get a delivery of food items. Did anybody see it? We're like, oh, no, nobody saw it. Nobody saw anything. Like, oh, a whole week's worth of stuff. Okay, well, contacted the shipper, and they're like, oh, well, said it was delivered. Well, it must be a mistake. We'll resend you stuff. And it turned out that thing, it had been delivered. And another volunteer who was on vacation, so wasn't in this conversation, had put everything out, and it went in less than 48 hours, to the point where we had no idea a week's worth of food was even there. Mm-hmm. And that was so sobering, I think, for us, and being like, oh my gosh, there really is a demand like no other for a week's worth of food that you think is going to go to, family, tons of families, that is in less than 48 hours.
So centers are providing these things for the top of the Maslow's hierarchy, right? Looking out to try to help folks get shelter and food and clothing and all the basics like that. Legal services to try to make sure people know how to access opportunities outside of the center. Talk to me a little bit about healthcare, both in terms of physical, just healthcare, and mental healthcare.
We get a lot of social work students from Quinnipiac and Southern, actually. So we're really lucky. Honestly, about 70% of the interns we get throughout the year are social work interns. So they work directly with our support services coordinator to work with, they'll do intakes with folks, referrals with folks. We do also have, with our youth department, we have a recovery support specialist. So she works primarily with folks 25 and under, but she specifically works with those youth as kind of a case manager, a sponsor. They also our other youth services coordinator is a licensed family and children's therapist as well. So she doesn't do clinical hours here, but she brings a lot of her expertise when it comes to that. She runs our DCF program that we do with our youth as well. And then we're really lucky. We have a lot of referrals in New Haven. We have a lot of safe, affirming places in Greater New Haven that we can send people when it comes to, again, like you said, mental health services, physical health, electrolysis, voice therapy, everything and anything. I mean, we have this huge community board. It's really cool. We have the magnetic paint. It's this huge wall with the magnetic paint, and so much of the information on there is just referrals and resources and things like that, whether, again, mental health, physical health, all the above. Also, we work really closely with Anchor Health. Anchor Health is a big partner of ours. We do vaccine clinics with them, STI testing, HIV testing, as well as our ID and gender marker clinics. So they come in and they directly support our clients and community members with the name changing and all of that. And then we work really closely with Fairhaven Community Health Program or Health Center as well. They actually almost used our space to administer their HRT for their patients who have HRT because they were this close to not being able to do it in their facility anymore. And they actually can't, but they're working with DPH to do it in one of their facilities now. Again, it's one of those things, just like the legal services. I mean, I bet, again, probably reiterating everything you're thinking as well. You know, people reach out to us so frequently, at least every week, about, I'm in crisis, I need to find a therapist, or my health is really, really bad, I need to find a doctor. I mean, I had a woman call me. She desperately needed to find a dentist, but was having a really hard time with doctors like not respecting her pronouns and not respecting her gender or her given name, which, you know, and I actually was able to connect her with the Health Collective, who has, they have dentistry there, and she had a really great experience and whatnot. So I can't even tell you how much we do referrals. It is one of the bigger things that our case management program has here. And then, you know, we have sexual health classes that run a lot here. Right now, we're doing one with a doctoral student at Quinnipiac who's focusing it specifically around occupational therapy, and then is using what he's learning and giving it to Quinnipiac's occupational therapy department, so they have some queer curriculum that is directly from the LGBTQ community.
You are listening to WESU Middletown, 88.1 FM.
What other media source brings you such a stimulating and provocative mix of news and public affairs from NPR and Pacifica alongside independent sources, in addition to providing a home for hard-to-find specialty freeform music programs? Help WESU understand what programs you value most, and help close out our Spring Pledge Drive with a donation today, so WESU can wrap up our fiscal year with a balanced budget and get back to the good stuff. WESUFM.org/pledge.
Come to the forest. It's a place not so far away where you don't have to mow the lawn or babysit. Ask your parents to take you to where the other you lives. But first, stop by discovertheforest.org, brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
So yeah, we're lucky to be able to partner with a lot of folks, again, a lot of social work interns from a bunch of different universities, but I'd say we do get a lot of Quinnipiac students and a lot of Southern students as well.
Jillian Celentano pulled me into a program that Quinnipiac has where they model, trans folk come in and be model patients and sort of act out a scenario.
Yeah.
And the students were asking us questions, and I was so impressed with the commitment of that program to make sure that these students were getting, you know, at least an introduction. Here are some of the special needs that some of your patients are going to have.
Yeah, and Quinnipiac did not have that. I was in their pre-med I did my undergrad at Quinnipiac, and I was in their pre-med program, and I took the class that you have to take to learn patient care, and there was nothing about the LGBTQ plus community. Nothing. at all. So yeah, so I actually spoke with Jillian about that program. We had a meeting and I thought it was so cool, so incredible.
Amanda, is Quinnipiac outside of the range of Norwalk? Do you have something similar that you can rely on?
So we work with a lot of universities in the area. I think because we're a little bit more southern, we pull from New York a little bit. So we also have a case management or our care coordination department, which does all the supportive direct services to clients and community members. We use exclusively social work students with their ESWs or MSWs because we like to be able to offer like a really well-rounded experience. It's a community center, so it's perfect for social work students. So we've had folks from Fordham, NYU, we've had folks from UConn, Stanford and Stores, Southern. We get them from all over. So I don't think we have like a direct funnel of like a school that we work with super closely. Just started working a little bit more with CT State Norwalk, which is like formerly Norwalk Community College, on non-clinical internships. So that's more like direct support for like the center. So like perfect for somebody who's like in a human service degree or thinks they want to go into human services and they don't necessarily want to do clinical work or direct client work to get to sample a little bit of all what it takes to be in a nonprofit space. So we've been working a little bit with them on that. And in terms of medical stuff, I mean, obviously we're New Haven Present, we don't have any kind of like medical staff, we don't have prescribers, we don't have nurses or anything like that, but we do work fairly closely with Circle Care Center, which is right across the street from us, which is very nice in that we're like, hey, we don't do HRT, but those folks do it. Or and we are right also across the street from MFAP, so Mid-Fairfield AIDS Project. So that's really awesome for us to be able to work with them on HIV positive folks. They can get testing and they have like a harm reduction model. So they'll do a bunch of like needle exchanges, Narcan trainings, things like that. So it's kind of a nice little pocket where we can kind of fit a lot of that like social learning, community support stuff, medical stuff, like recovery and harm reduction stuff. And then we offer a bunch of NA and AA groups that meet at our space, which is nice for the folks that are looking for that abstinence only kind of based 12-step support stuff. So yeah, and I think we've been trying to do some more stuff kind of centered around health and education around that. We had done a vaccine clinic with Circle Care. This month we have a conversation we're centering around like living with HIV in 2025. And we'll be talking, with a bunch of people like sex education professionals, social workers, medical doctors who have experience in HIV and coming from a lived perspective, as hosted by Ronak Patel, who is a man who was diagnosed with HIV in his late teens, sexual health stuff, and trying to do that like holistic thing. And you talk about the Maslow hierarchy of needs, and yeah, trying to do that whole thing. And again, and from a queer affirming space, I think we're always just trying to make sure that folks are coming. When we're hosting anybody, that we're coming from like, a really intersectional, queer focused, trauma informed perspective and keeping in mind race and ability and, ethnicity and language and all those things that like can sometimes make queer spaces specifically not as accessible.
Accessible is a word that I want to jump on there for a second because you're both in an urban environment. Laura, you were saying about, referrals to like the Health Collective, but Hartford's a long way from New Haven and I'm out in the middle of nowhere. It's lovely at night because it's quiet, but if you need services, if you need public transportation, there's not a lot. So how does transportation or the lack thereof fit into people being able to access these services?
We're really lucky if folks are able to access the train or bus line. We are like less than a mile from the New Haven train station, and we have 3 bus stops right around here. But the city does give us bus passes sometimes. So we get bus passes for free and they have a couple rides on them and we can give them out to folks. Sadly, we don't always have them because when we have them, we give them out. Then we have to wait a couple months till we get more. And then we got a bunch of $25 gift cards that we were able to give out to people for transportation specifically. I mentioned we work with DCF. We have a peer mentor and peer mentee program. Our peer mentors have to so we work with the Hartford area, but sometimes they live, around Hartford or not in the city, and they have to drive there to go do their background checks and their fingerprinting. So we give them these gift cards so that we can at least cover some of the transportation costs because they're already, volunteering their time and whatnot. And then New Haven is really walkable. APNH, A Place to Nourish Your Health, they do a bunch of work when it comes with HIV and AIDS patients and whatnot. They're just a walk away from us. So we will literally print out directions for folks, tell them how to get there, and then they'll just walk down there. So it's really the one thing about New Haven, even though it's a large city, we are in the queer part, queering up the neighborhood. So there's a lot of resources. Like Make Haven is a really cool resource. It's a place where folks can go and learn new skills. It's arts and crafts, laser printing, glass making, and it's a really cool space for folks to just go hang out. But yeah, and then we have 2 handicap bathrooms as well, single bathrooms, ramps throughout the Pride Center. All of our doorways are big enough for either wheelchairs or mobility aids to go through. One of the big issues with our old space was the lack of accessibility. The doorways were very small. You had to take an elevator, which was not very big. None of the bathrooms were mobility aid accessible. I mean, I had a woman in a wheelchair in tears one time just trying to use the bathroom in the old Pride Center. And I mean, there was very little, you couldn't even find the building for the longest time either because we couldn't put a flag out. We're in a basement. We were able to, move buildings at the end of 2023, which was a huge, huge deal for us. I mean, the amount of accessibility that we have now. We have only 2 stairs in the entire Pride Center, and you can use a ramp to get up. You don't have to go up the stairs to get to there. I mean, I'm disabled myself, so I love not having to go up 3 down and up 3 flights of stairs just to exit my building. We also have our Rainbow Elders and Friends group donates packs of quarters to us that we can also give out to community members if they're driving. We have parking literally right outside, this way, that way, that way, that way, so they can use it for the meters as well.
We moved to the location we're at now, I think in 2019. Before that, we were upstairs above Circle Care, and it was just a bunch of rooms, I guess, in a hallway. So yeah, the humble beginnings of all the Pride centers, they all start in someone's basement or attic, right? Literally. So, and then you get to a place with natural light, and then suddenly everything feels right again. We're fortunate that we're all on the ground floor right now. We have, I think, 2 of the bathrooms we have are large enough to fit mobility aids in them. I think we have another bathroom that's kind of a little bit on the smaller side. We recently moved our doorbell. We have a doorbell that has a camera on it in our vestibule when you come in. And recently we were doing an audit on accessibility stuff and realized it was it was too high. So we fixed it. So it's at the level that we need to for folks that are in chairs. We try to utilize alt text descriptions on all the images, on our website and in our newsletters and on our social media. We utilize closed captioning on any films or videos that we have that we show in the space. We try to take into consideration accessibility needs of neurodivergent folks in the space, in terms of amplifying sound or textures or things like that. We try to be as good as we can when it comes to food sensitivities, if there are food allergies or dietary conditions. It's hard to try to do it all, but we think we are always open to people telling us what we can do better, and trying to just kind of keep wondering whose, voices aren't being heard in this and how we can make sure that we're meeting the needs of all the folks that we're seeing.
Yeah, we actually work directly. The woman I mentioned who had a really hard time in our old center trying to use the bathroom, we actually worked directly with her for this space, right? She gave us reflective tape to put on every lip to make sure that, folks knew that if they were using a chair or mobility aid, that there was a lip there in the floor. She pointed out that one of our bathrooms has, so when we moved in here, the bathrooms all had murals in them. This used to be an art studio, but one of them, there's paintings on the ground that says like, push here for the door to open. And that really triggered her. It really bothered her, understandably so, because it was kind of falsifying the sense of accessibility. So that's something that we're working on, is to paint over all of those. But the same thing, Amanda, you said with the doorbell, we had the exact same issue at our old space, but we couldn't move the doorbell. It was stuck, like it was into the wall. So that when we moved here, that was like the first thing we thought about was make sure the doorbell is low enough that folks
people can use it. You are listening to WESU Middletown 88.1 FM. We have a number of queer organizations, queer advocacy groups here in Connecticut who are doing some great work. There is queer community just among individuals. Are they doing enough to support you?
I mean, I'd like to think that every queer org started because somebody saw that something wasn't being done and wanted to do something about it. I think that in itself is definitely trying to help. I think one of the things that we've tried to think about, or I've tried to think about as people have reached out to me about stuff, is like how to get involved, is like how to streamline, how to make sure that we're not duplicating each other's work, how to communicate with each other. Especially after the election, we had a whole lot of people who are like, I want to get involved, I want to do this thing. And sometimes that takes like coming into spaces, existing spaces, and listening and seeing what they're doing, and then using your voice to be able to say, like, I think we could do it like thing like that instead of starting something from scratch. I think we're all a little bit of revolutionaries deep inside and we want to burn it all down and start fresh and use our ideas. But I think utilizing the groups that we have, I know that Laura and I have talked about like the siloing of queer orgs, not just in Connecticut, not just now, but like, everywhere and all the time, is such a waste of our resources and our time. And we can all be doing so much stuff together. It's not, are they not doing enough? It's like, are they utilizing their resources in a way that we're all able to utilize them together and make sure that we're achieving the same things that we want, like together, and trying not to reinvent the wheel essentially with 20 people instead of, because there's, you don't think that the big orgs are going to listen to you, or the people who've been around are going to listen to you.
You took the words right out of my mouth, Amanda. The thing I constantly say is we do not need to reinvent the wheel. There are people who have started this work in the 1980s, 70s, 60s here in Connecticut, people currently doing it. And, I've seen a lot of things where, the Pride centers are doing a program, and then you see like some smaller groups doing the exact same kind of program. And that kind of goes back to me saying we're all fighting for the same funding. So instead of us all siloing ourselves, it is so important for us to work together and combine our resources, because we're all going to burn out. We're not going to be actually able to support our community in effective ways if we're all running on fumes. So sometimes I see this person doing the same thing and this person doing the same thing and pushing themselves to the limit and doing it in the same city or in the same vicinity or something. And I'm like, why are you not doing this together? Because there's so many incredible organizations in Connecticut. We are so lucky to have so many LGBTQ orgs, groups, prides all around. But again, we're all fighting for the same funding and we're all doing very similar things. And if we combined our efforts and work more together, we're stronger together. There's few of them and many of us. I hear a lot of these at the protests, few of them, many of us. And if we just combined our forces, we'd be stronger than ever. Lean on the 501c3s that are already there to fund your programs. A lot of local pride events, those are a big question they ask. I say, hit me up. Let me help you. We are a 501c3. You don't have to go through all of this and that and that and that to go find there's so many more hoops people tend to jump through that they don't need to, when they could just reach out to one of the LGBTQ orgs that is already doing the work and just work with them and alongside them. I mean, I know Amanda and I have had this conversation.
There's a lot of nodding going on.
Yeah, I don't know how many times Amanda and I have chatted about this, but it's honestly frustrating because we're all stretching ourselves so thin, doing incredible things. But as I said, we're burning ourselves.
It's like the question is always just like, well, I have an idea, or I don't agree with how the approach you're taking on this, or, well, you're not using updated language, because you're somebody who's been doing this stuff for 45 years, and so it's like, I think we should be also being prepared to have those kind of harder conversations with each other, and recognizing that we're all not going to be perfect and what we're doing, and we're going to have to sit with the discomfort of being told, hey, that's an outdated kind of perception of this thing, or hey, actually, I think that this could be more impactful if we do it like this, or saying, hey, I'm coming to a place of my own bias in this, and I want to be better about it. I just need a little patience and a little education, and I'm going to work on that. And, this is how you can help support me in that. And we're often afraid to have those conversations with each other. And it's just easier to just say like, well, I don't like how they've handled this, or I don't like the direction they're taking in this, or this person said this thing. And then we just go off and make our own thing. And then like Laura says, like we're on a shoestring budget, on shoestring nerves, and dealing with all this, and we don't feel that sense of community. I think that needs to be brought back to the center of our movement in itself, is being prepared to kind of bond together and sit with the fact that community is not always pretty, but we are standing for the same things. It's a sign of love if we're able to have those hard conversations with each other, and together we can, actually fight fascism.
That's part of the Project 2025 strategy. We're going to throw landmines 5 or 6 a day so that everybody is focused on the little explosions and trying to triage the wounds from that. And they're going to be so busy that they don't have the capacity to network, to pool resources, to be an actual community. We are just going to keep lobbing these outrages. When there's a fire on your couch, it's hard to be thinking about anything but how do I put out the fire on my couch?
Yeah.
Tell folks how to A, contact you, your centers, and B, how to support you. Specifically, what can people who are listening do to help?
The biggest thing is, a slogan that we say here at NHPC is donate your dollars or your hours. We need help. Especially at NHPC, we're a very small staff. There is only 5 of us, and not all of us are full-time. But we rely heavily on volunteers and individual donations. So it is so important for individuals to directly support LGBTQ plus orgs, your community centers, your LGBTQ community centers, because then that allows us to go support those other initiatives, right, that we were just chatting about. Donate food to the New Haven Pride Center. We need more food. Donate your toiletry items. You're moving from college. Give me your clothes. And
do you deal with furniture at all?
We take chairs and couches. When it comes to like some of the other stuff, we don't really have space for it. But what we do take are pots and pans and kitchenware. Okay. Anything kitchenware. We take bedding as well. If you have a comforter, sheets, pillows, pillowcases, people donate air mattresses to us actually. And those go the second they come in. Sleeping bags. If you have sleeping bags, cheap tents for our houseless clients, animal food, cat food, dog food, fish food, litter boxes, bowls for animals. I mean, we have folks who come in and just need the basic household things. Sponges, dish soap, all of that stuff. We need it. Our community needs it. Don't go to Goodwill. Go to your local LGBTQ plus centers.
So if I had stuff, what's the phone number? What's the email address?
203-387-2252. And then if you want to just reach our general line, it's info@newhavenpridecenter.org. My direct information, bear with me, I'm going to spell it for y'all. It is El Boccadoro, which is LBOCCADORO at newhavenpridecenter.org. And then you can also DM us on Facebook, Instagram, all the socials as well. Sometimes that's a little bit easier for folks. They don't have access to email or things like that. And you can also drop it. The Pride Center is open Mondays, Fridays. It's open Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. Mondays and Fridays we're open from 11 to 4. Tuesdays and Thursdays we're open from 11 to 1. We always if folks call us ahead of time and they need to come in later for any reason, 99% of the time we can accommodate to that. Ask us questions. Bother us away. We want to be bothered. We want community in here. So I tell a lot of people, when they want to volunteer, I say, just come in. Just drop in. I'll show you around the center. I'll tell you what you can do, and then you let me know what you want.
Amanda.
What we've been seeing is really super impactful is folks that volunteer to just do like center support stuff. So people volunteering for our front desk. We're open from 10 to 6 Monday through Friday. We've been fortunate sometimes to have almost like enough volunteers to staff that full time. Some like oftentimes not. We're coming into the seasons where we're losing volunteers, we're losing interns. And so having folks who want to pull hours in that and doing that, it's so great. And sometimes it's really slow, but sometimes you're able to be that person to, help somebody who's coming out for the first time, who's never come here before, or someone who's here to support their, their spouse or their child, and help people with our lending library, help them get set up to use a laptop for like help at the food pantry, the gender affirming closet, like even just people who just want to hang out and talk. So if you like talking to people, like that's the thing for you. If you are in an organization or a school and you want to run a hygiene product drive or a food drive for us, or you want to collect gift cards to supermarkets, that's awesome. It's great. You can coordinate that with us. Fundraisers that are done by other folks is always great because you get control over it. You can do what you want. Do you want to do a bake sale? Do you want to do a do you want to do a fitness class? Do you want to do a karaoke night? Whatever, and businesses that are hosting things for us and are showing up for us, it's really great. We have an event coming up at the end of the month. A local restaurant reached out to us right after the election and we're like, hey, we want to host a thing for you. They're hosting an entire like mini gala for us. Yeah, that's Josie and Tony's in South Norwalk. So like stuff like that, I think showing up and being there is awesome. And then we have a monthly giving program that we rolled out at the beginning of the year, which is our Sustainer Squad. And it's kind of like you sign up one time and for whatever amount of money, whether it's $1, $5, whatever, you can, you set it up once and you forget about it. And that helps support the work that we do on an ongoing basis. And I would say like you can go to our website. We're at www.ctpridecenter.org. CT Pride Center is our handle for Instagram and Facebook. You can email just tcc@ctpridecenter.org. Again, like, folks can feel free to come in and hang out. I'm always telling people, you don't have to come here for an appointment or something. Like you can just come here and on your lunch break. You can come here, like, bring a date here, get coffee from Dunkin' Donuts and just chat, like come meet somebody here, work on your, like, if you work from home, come work. We have free Wi-Fi, come work.
Not only are there queer-owned businesses throughout the state that want to support and are just waiting to be asked, but I think there are also a lot of not necessarily queer-owned, but community-minded businesses that are allies, and they're just waiting to be asked. Last question for you both. What we have just spent the last hour talking about is mind-boggling. The amount of work that you do, the incredibly complex layers that go into it. So my last question is, what do you two as individuals, what are you doing to take care of yourselves? Please start by saying you're listening to Transqat. No. Oh no, that was just shameless.
I can see Amanda's face right now, and I know they thinking the same thing that I'm thinking right now. It's been hard. Sometimes you forget that you're also a community member when you're doing this work. Something I tell people a lot is I haven't been a patron at a Pride event in 7 years. In 7 years, I have only been working Pride events. I have not gone and been able to I enjoy them. I enjoy them always, but I've always been working, always been representing NHPC for the last 7 years. And that's a bit, I know, Mandy, you feel that. Amanda and I have both been in this work for a long time. Yeah, we forget that we're also part of the community.
We're going to take a road trip and we're going to go to a Pride event outside of Connecticut so that we can actually be no name anonymous queer people together at a Pride event for the first time in ever.
Yeah, I'm assuming you have this too. When you go out, sometimes in queer spaces, people walk up to you and they're like, I want to talk to you about New Haven Pride Center. And I'm like, no.
Not today.
10 to 5, sure. Monday through Friday. But at the end of the day, we're always on the clock. We're always worried about what's going on. Are we going to have funding? Are we going to be able to support our community? And so what I try to do, self-care, is I try my best to enjoy our programs as much as the community is as well. I try to take time away from the management of the program. And, we have these Hello Queer bazaars where we have vendors, LGBTQ businesses and artists and whatnot come in and sell their work. I'll take my NHPC hat off for a minute and just toot around and, go buy some things. And then, I stay off. I try to stay off the news while I'm home. While I'm at work, doing these jobs, you do need to be informed as to what's going on. Sadly, we cannot be those people that just tune it out. But when I'm home, the news does not exist.
Amanda, have you been reduced to speaking to those fish behind you yet? You just come home and sort of, oh, guys, I don't know what to tell you.
It's on a photo timer. They're asleep by the time I get home. Yeah, it's been a hard year. It's a hard year when you don't get to clock out of your job in the ways that Laura mentioned, and also in the ways that every time there's a screenshot of a Twitter account comes across your feed and you're just like, oh God, and yeah, you are wondering how is this going to affect my job? How is it going to affect my ability to do my job the way I want to do it? How is it going to impact the people that I'm working with? How is it going to impact my friends? How is it going to impact people outside the queer community who don't even know what's gotten a little bit easier, and that the constant is noise. So it dulls a little bit. It's so much easier said than done. I talk a lot about harm reduction and self-care and knowing that you're not single-handedly going to save the, Connecticut's queer community, and to do what you can when you can and take the moments of joy when they come. Vocalizing it when you're having a hard time has been helpful, I think, for me. Leaning into people, getting more into my body, doing gardening. Nothing feels better than having your hands in dirt. And I don't like gardening. I just like having a nice garden. But yanking out weeds for 3 hours, it does something, So that spending time with my partner and trying to balance the fun things and the being an adult thing, and also trying to do work that is really important. And I think that's something that's kind of keeps me going, is I feel right now that the work I'm doing is probably some of the most important that it's ever been. And the need to be present and be prepared to do that work means I have to nerf myself every once in a while and take myself out of the equation so that I'm not doing too much. And that goes for everybody in the work.
Thanks to both Amanda and Laura. Next up is the final episode of this Transqat Middletown Pride collaboration. We're talking about the evolving language of Soji. I'll be joined by Robin McCallan. I'll be joined by Robin McCallan and Bill Oleos from the LGBTQ Justice and Opportunity Network. Join us as we explore the what and the why behind the alphabet soup and the pronouns. Also, be sure to check out the previous episodes in this series, in which I spoke with the organizers and the Grand Marshals of Middletown Pride, as well as a panel of Connecticut librarians about censorship and funding issues. Librarians rule the universe. This has been Transqat. I'm Clare McCarthy. Thank you for listening. Let's talk soon.
This is Sadie McCarthy. I'm Claire's niece.
And you've just been listening to Transqat. It is made by one of my favorite people in the world, Clare McCarthy.
Transqat is a production of Transqat Enterprises, LLC.
Copyright 2023, all rights reserved.
Join us on the web at transqat.com.
That's TRANSQAT.com.
QAT.com.
QAT.com.
There you'll find links to Transqat, the blog,
writing projects,
speaking engagements,
and our PayPal donations page.
Please consider supporting our mission with your monkeys.
Your monies.
Your monies.
Not monkeys.
Please consider supporting our mission with your monies. Any monkeys will be gratefully received as well.
Follow Transqat on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube.
On TikTok, we are at The Real Transqat.
Want to tell your story on air?
Or ask Claire a question?
What is the deal?
She has all the answers.
Or suggest a guest or topic for an upcoming episode.
Use the contact page at the website
or email her directly at crmtranscat@gmail.com.
crmtranscat@gmail.com.
And thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. Bye.